Hi, this is Mr. Soderberg. Welcome to the second week of semester 2 for World History in AEO. If you remember last week, we looked at how civilizations grew and then they started to expand. And usually that expansion meant they were conquering people that lived near them. And they were expanding because they needed resources to run their civilization. So your learning target this week is you will be able to explain how three explorers from different parts of the Afro-Eurasian world zone played a key role in helping to connect this massive zone. If you remember from last week, the Afro-Eurasian zone consists of Northern Africa, Europe, and Asia. Okay, when we think of the 1300s, one thing you probably don't think about is travel. But by 1300, the Afro-Eurasian zone was a world zone that was in motion. People were traveling quite a bit around in that zone during that time, usually in groups, by camel, donkey, by foot, on horse, by ship. Um, Merchants were trading goods back and forth across caravans and across oceans. Sultans, kings, and popes were sending soldiers all over the place. Diplomats were sending messages to different parts of that world zone. People were leaving areas and going to different areas in search of employment. There were pilgrims that were traveling from place to place, going to Mecca, searching for enlightenment. So there was just a lot of travel that was going on. And by that time, travel had started to get easier. It wasn't really easy like we think of travel today. Travel for us is relatively easy if we have, the ways and means to get around. But back then, we think of it as being difficult. But things were happening in the world that were making it easier for those people to travel around in the early 1300s. And one reason was that the Mongols had brought security to the trade routes of Asia. Now, we think of the Mongols as being these really tyrannical, kind of bloodthirsty people, but they really wanted security because they benefited greatly from the Silk Road trade. And, they had houses set up on the Silk Road for people that were traveling to stay in, and fresh horses for travelers and traders. So that made it easier for many people to travel, just knowing that the Mongols had secured that area of the world. Northern Africa at the time, many people in Northern Africa started to switch to convert to Islam. They became Muslims. It was brought to Northern Africa by trade caravans that came there from the Middle East. And a lot of the people that were living in Africa at the time felt that Islam was a good match for them because it taught that everyone is equal and that you should, respect your fellow man. And leaders in Africa at the time started to adopt Islam as a way to legitimize their rule. The people were converting to Islam. The leaders said, well, I'll convert to Islam as well, adopt it as our national religion, and then I'll have better control over my people. But it made it easier to travel across Northern Africa because now these people were working with one another as opposed to be working against one another. They had something in common. They had Islam in common. And finally, travel became easier by sea because of navigation and sailing technology that had increased. So we saw, especially in this area, more travel on the Indian Ocean. So we're going to look at three travelers in particular. Marco Polo, who traveled and dealt with a man by the name of Kublai Khan, who was in charge of Mongolia, which is is a huge, vast empire that consisted of present day China. The second traveler, I should say, is a guy by the name of Ibn Battuta. He is from Tangier, which is present day Morocco. It's in the northwest corner of Africa, and he traveled extensively. And Zhang He is a Chinese traveler, and he will be the third traveler and explorer that you will learn about this week. All right, your assignments this week, you'll have two of them. The first one is called World Traveler, and what I'm going to have you do is look at different excerpts from Marco Polo's books, and I want you to try to figure out what Marco Polo is describing. He saw things in China that no European had heard of or seen at the time, and so he tried to describe them to this dude that was writing his book about his travels. And so it's kind of nice because it will allow you to imagine what it would be like to be living in Europe at the time and reading about Marco Polo's discoveries in Asia for the first time. Second assignment is I am going to send you, by sharing with you, a word processing document that you will use the chart within that document to compare the three explorers that we talked about on the previous slide. You're going to learn about why they were traveling, when they were traveling, where they went, and what their legacy was, different things like that. Now, I ask you to do this, to make a copy of that word processing document. It's going to be a Google Doc. Make a copy of it. Add your name to the title. That way, when you share it with me, there won't be any confusion. It'll just make life easier for you and for me. If you have any questions this week, please give me a call, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Email me. If I don't email you first, some work I saw from the first week was looking really good, and enjoyed reading it. And have a great week.